We have Assemblymember Arembla with us. If you'd like to say a couple words, that would be great. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Alvarado and Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today in support of the funding for State Route 269 in the city of Huron in Fresno County. I'm here to urge the Commission to dedicate $18 million to the state highway funds for State Route 269. Located in rural Fresno County, the city of Huron is home to approximately 7,000 individuals with an annual income of $21,000. The mayor of the city has told me they are the poorest town in the entire state of California. State Route 269 is a connector between State Route 198 and Interstate 5 and is the only way to access Huron from the north. 269 is extremely important to the local economy because it connects Huron's agricultural industry to the goods movement corridors. Since State Route 269 became part of the state highway system in 1976, there have been numerous safety issues due to the occasional flooding along the bridge. The closures resulting from the flooding have cost the Huron community approximately $454,000 every year over the course of 40 years, totaling more than $18 million in economic losses. The hazardous road and bridge conditions have also caused multiple accidents and fatalities. When 269 floods, residents are forced to take a 28-mile detour. If the state approves the amount of $18 million, it will be matched with $10 million in local funds to allow the city of Huron and its partners, Caltrans and the Fresno Council of Governments. This is a terrific example of how the state and local governments can successfully partner together to get critical infrastructure built. This project is a critical piece of local infrastructure that is in desperate need of improvement. Huron has been waiting decades for this bridge to become a reality. The locals have made it a priority to improve the road, and I am pleased I have the opportunity to help get the funds dedicated for this project. I request your support for the dedication of these funds for State Route 269, and thank you for the opportunity to present today.
Thank you. Assemblyman, thank you for joining us today and for your service to our state. I wanted to recognize two items that are associated with your statement. First, the shared responsibility of local and state taxpayers and voters to meet these needs directly. The second is for your courageous vote in support of Senate Bill 1 for road repairs and traffic relief and transit improvements throughout our state. I'm sure over the months and years ahead, we'll have many legislators come before us who didn't support the improvements that their residents will enjoy as we enact this critical legislation. You took that tough vote in an affirmative way, and I just wanted to thank and recognize you as we deliver those improvements together for the good of our citizens and the good of our state's economy.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. We want to take the roll, Douglas, please.
Commissioner Burke. Here. Commissioner Dunn. Here. Commissioner Arp. Here. Commissioner Gilmetti. Commissioner Guardino. Present. Commissioner Inman. Here. Commissioner Kehoe. Commissioner Madaffer. Here. Commissioner Tavaloni. Here. Chair Alvarado. Yes. We have a quorum.
Okay, we'll start out with item 87.
Good morning, Commissioners. Item 87 is an action item proposing amendments for both new and currently programmed SHOP projects for approval. There's three elements to this request. There are 93 new projects. These are primarily storm damage from this winter and spring rainfall. There's 204 currently updates to 204 currently programmed projects. These are updates to scope, cost, and schedule of projects in the future years of the 2016 SHOP, including the project on Route 269. Finally, two long lead projects, and these are projects with extensive and environmental and preliminary engineering work, which are proposed for programming in the SHOP. Staff has reviewed these amendments and the change noted on the change list and recommends your approval.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 82.
Commissioners, item 82 is the hearing for the 2017 Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program, otherwise known as the 5310 program. This program provides annual grants to the purchase of transit capital equipment, provides operating assistance, and funds mobility management projects. The goal is to meet the specialized needs of elderly and/or disabled persons to whom mass transportation services are unavailable, insufficient, or inappropriate. Government code places 3 mandates on the Commission. The Commission is to direct the Department on how to allocate the funds for the program. The Commission is to establish an appeals process for the program, and the Commission is to hold at least 1 public hearing prior to approving the program of projects. The available funding for the 2017 Section 5310 program is $16,655,271. Eligible small urban and rural agencies submitted 182 applications for 218 projects requesting approximately $27 million. The applications were first scored by the RTPAs, then the State Review Committee reviewed the RTPA scores and used the criteria adopted by the Commission to develop the statewide priority list. On May 31st, the State Review Committee and Commission staff held the staff-level conference to hear 2 appeals submitted by an RTPA and a local agency. The project applicants were unsuccessful in demonstrating that the Commission's adopted program criteria was incorrectly applied in the application review process. The appeals were denied. The draft 2017 Section 5310 project list was presented at the May Commission meeting. Subsequent to the meeting, it was identified that 5 projects were placed in the large urbanized area portions of the Section 5310 program. This was corrected. However, this change did not have an impact on the projects that are proposed for funding. Staff recommends that prior to adopting the final 2017 program of projects for the Section 5310 program, the Commission conduct the mandated public hearing and incorporate any changes that are recommended during the public hearing in the final project list.
So we'll open the public hearing. We have no speakers listed. Are there any in the audience that would like to speak on the issue? We'll close the public hearing.
Item 83 is an action item. This is the approval of the 2017 FTA Section 5310 Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program of Projects. The revised list included in your revised book item programs 100% of the estimated funds available. If projects are not delivered or if additional funds above the original estimate amount become available, the next project below the 100% funding level will be funded. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Burke. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 84.
Commissioners, agenda item 84 is an information item. This is an update from the North Coast Railroad Authority. Over the years, the Commission has allocated millions to NCRA from various funds, including TCRP and Proposition 116 funds, for the purposes of establishing a rail line in the northwestern part of the state. We obtained a copy of NCRA's financial statements for 2016. The independent auditor expressed concerns over NCRA's ability to meet its obligations. Specifically, the audit report said that NCRA is economically dependent of federal and state funds for rail line rehabilitation projects and Northwestern Pacific Railroad Company to provide working capital in the form of advances. Additionally, NCRA has suffered recurring losses from operations, and its total current liabilities exceeds its total current assets. This raises substantial doubt about NCRA's ability to continue as a going concern. We have requested Mitch Stogner, Executive Director of NCRA, to provide you today with an update on their business plan, operations, and financial position. We've also requested Caltrans to provide you an update on their contracts with NCRA.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Alvarado and Commissioners. As your summary for this item points out, NCRA was created by the state legislature in 1989 to preserve and restore the historic NWP rail corridor, which runs east to west from Napa to Novato and then north parallel to Highway 101 from Novato through Marin, Sonoma, Mendocino, and Humboldt counties to the port of Humboldt Bay. Under the provisions set forth in the TCRP statute from July of 2000, the CTC allocated $41 million in TCRP funds from about 2006 to 2011 to make repairs to the trackway, bridges, and crossing signals so that freight train operations could resume on the first 62 miles of the railroad from the National Rail Interchange, which is a little bit south of Napa, to Windsor in Sonoma County. That section of trackway was restored to the satisfaction of the Federal Railroad Administration in May of 2011, and the NCRA contracted with a small freight hauler, the Northwestern Pacific Company, who restored freight service in July of 2011 and continues to provide twice weekly freight service on this portion of the line, hauling primarily feed grains, barley, wood products, building materials, and liquefied petroleum gas on a limited basis on what we call the Brazos branch line between Napa and Sonoma. The remainder of the line, Windsor to Eureka, is currently not operational, and NCRA continues to address maintenance emergencies and act as land manager of the entire 300-plus mile trackway without state assistance of any kind. The state legislature twice heard our appeal for state maintenance funding to address health and safety emergencies related to flooding, fire hazards, vandalism, emergency bridge and surface crossing repairs, and environmental cleanup, and approved legislation both in 2005 and 2007 to address these issues. But unfortunately, both bills were vetoed by then Governor Schwarzenegger. We're considering another legislative effort, but that obviously takes time and money, and as your staff has pointed out, both of which we have little of. I also wanted to point out that we've worked collaboratively with the North Coast cities of Healdsburg, Ukiah, Willits, Eureka, and Arcata to allow use of the NCRA right-of-way for multi-use recreational trails, and have worked with Caltrout and State Fish and Wildlife to restore important fish-bearing streams along the rail line in the Eel River watershed. In response to the summary that you have, there's a reference to the fact that, or to the allegation, I guess, that NCRA has collateralized state assets. In response to that comment, I just want to point out that NCRA has not collateralized any of its assets for the purpose of securing any loan. The only outstanding loan we have, other than unsecured loans from our operator, is an FRA, Federal Railroad Rehabilitation and Improvement Financing Loan, which is secured by rail cars and rail equipment, which were not acquired with state funds. The other comment I wanted to address in your staff report is the going concern comment regarding NCRA's 2015-2016 single-year audit, which is a comment that our auditors have made for at least the last 7 or 8 years. And it relates to the fact that we rely on our agency budget to pay for our agency operations, and we don't have a dedicated source of state funding, despite several attempts to secure such funding, which I mentioned our efforts in 2005, 2007. We also explored legislation in 2012. And as I say, it may make sense to try to do that again. Northwestern Pacific, as I mentioned, is our operator. NWP's general counsel is Mr. Doug Bosco, and he is also here with me to answer any questions regarding the freight train operations. And we're happy to try to answer any questions that commissioners may have.
Thank you for coming, Mitch. I think you were before us in 2006 with a business plan. How successful are you guys at achieving that business plan that you presented to the commission back then?
Thank you, Chairman, or Commissioner Gilmetti. I can tell you, as the agency that contracts with a freight operator, that our financial position I've just summarized and has not changed. But I think Mr. Bosco could give you a summary of freight operations relative to the business plan, if that is permissible.
Okay, I have a few more questions up there. On a little sheet that I have here, your basic operating expenses are a little over $1 million.
That's a little high. I'd say for our agency, we're talking about in the neighborhood of $700,000 a year. And please keep in mind that is an executive director, an administrative assistant, a property manager, an engineer, and contract legal and contract accounting. It's a very skeletal staff.
But your total operating revenue was a little over $500,000. So you're suffering a loss every year.
Yes, we are. And we have some one-time property events that allow us to bridge that gap. But oftentimes, our project engineer and our legal counsel and sometimes our contract accountant just simply aren't getting paid.
Well, that doesn't work very well. And then you sold some property. Can you describe the property that you sold for about $1.3 million?
We sold 4.1 acres on the eastern gateway to the city of Ukiah to the county, or to the Judicial Council of California for the construction of the Mendocino Superior Court there. I worked closely with District 1 staff, the Deputy Director of Planning, Brad Medham, and we established a regime whereby the property needed to be declared access, there needed to be assurance that it was sold at fair market value, and there needed to be a guarantee that the state received its proportionate share of its contribution to the original purchase of the property. And that happened to be 10%. We did all those things, we in fact paid Caltrans 10%.
So that's been covering your losses, your operating losses.
Yes, it addressed our operating loss issue.
Okay, so do you have any other properties you can sell to keep covering your operating losses?
We think we may, and that's exactly sort of the what we wanted to try to establish with District 1 was, why don't we establish a plan where we identify excess property, we follow your procedures, and we sell property that's excess to railroad operations and use that as a way to cover our operating deficit.
Well, sooner or later, the well's going to go dry because you're not going to have enough property to sell to keep yourself going. There's also an item here that there was $500,000 in legal expenses. Can you tell me what that's a big bill.
Yes, it is. And as a matter of fact, Commissioner Gilmetti, we have a case that was brought by the Friends of the Eel River in 2011 that was settled in Marin Superior Court. The basic issue is whether or not train operations are federally exempt, that is, under the regulation of the Interstate Commerce Commission and not subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. Marin Superior Court ruled in our favor. It was appealed to the First District Court of Appeals, which also ruled in our favor. Friends of the Eel River have appealed to the state Supreme Court, and we had oral arguments on May 3rd. And, you know, we have to wait and see. We have until August 3rd to see what the state Supreme Court decides.
And the basis of their suit was what?
Basis of the suit was that we had an inadequate operations environmental impact report, and that report should have covered the entire expanse of the railroad, 300-plus miles, instead of just the division upon which we intend to run freight trains. So even though we have no plan in the foreseeable future to try to operate trains north of Willits, they sued us, Friends of the Eel River did, on the basis that our EIR did not sufficiently look at potential environmental damage north of Willits.
Okay. Another question. You guys borrowed money from the Federal Railroad Administration to the tune of $2.8 million?
Actually, it was $3.18 million, and it was in 2011, and it was the final piece of repairs prior to operations that we used those funds for, and we have not missed a single payment to them. We pay them back $45,000 quarterly on that loan.
Is there accrued interest outstanding too on that loan?
I do not believe so, Commissioner Gilmetti. It's a 2.96% loan, low-interest loan, and we have made our payments timely.
So if we're losing money and we don't have revenues to cover all of our expenses, how are we going to pay these loans back?
Well, with respect, when you say loans, we have one outstanding loan to the federal government, which is the so-called RRIF loan. We're making $45,000 quarterly payments, and that's covered by our operator. That's actually part of the $15,000 a month the NWP company is paying. They are a co-borrower on that loan.
Correct.
So that's how we're covering that loan.
So they have enough assets to cover the debt service?
Well, the federal government has determined that between the NCRA and the NWP company, we have enough to cover the debt service, and we have since 2011.
So, Mitch, I guess the key question in my mind is how are you going to keep going on an annual basis if your revenue projections can't meet your expenses?
Well, I think that's a very good question, Commissioner Gilmetti. I think we need to make the case to the legislature again that if freight trains are something that it's felt are in the public interest, and we feel they are. You know, one freight train takes 4 trucks off 101. A gallon of diesel will take a ton of freight more than 400 miles. By every indication, it is good for the economy, good for the environment, and good energy policy. And we think as a policy matter, freight trains ought to be encouraged. But we have to come back to the legislature and get some help. I mean, that's the bottom line, I think.
Okay.
Well, clearly, your business plan has some issues, and getting an audit letter like that every year is not one. I have a question on whether or not we have a differing opinion between our staff and your report, whether there were assets that are securing one of those loans. So, Teresa, can you maybe counter the argument here? I mean, what either they are or they aren't listed as secured collateral.
Commissioners, if I can answer that. This staff report was prepared by Caltrans, and in the staff reports, it says, we are concerned that the department does not currently have an ongoing oversight role with NCRA, but Caltrans is concerned that NCRA may have collateralized some of their assets that were purchased with state funds. This is a Caltrans staff report, and there is a concern that's identified in this Caltrans staff report. And I suppose the question is, you know, how are you continuing to continue your operations when you have no ability to meet your current obligations, and you're operating just based on administrative operations technically through another entity that's paying for your operations. So that's really the concern. And are you doing that what's in it for NWP would be the question.
Well, that's not the same as the question in the staff report, but in response to the question in the staff report, we are not collateralizing state assets, so I wanted to be clear about that. With respect to the deficit in our agency budget, yes, that is a problem, and we have grappled with it mightily, and we have two options. We can continue to grapple with it mightily, or we can report to the state, you're in charge of 300 miles of right-of-way. Or we can seek state legislation to provide some funding for our agency budget.
Well, at some point, you're going to have to do that. And so, look in the mirror, do a gut check, and figure out where you're going to go with this thing. And I think probably we might need to. Go ahead.
Well, the short line freight business is a difficult business. Post Staggers Act, we saw a lot of the short lines go out of business. Where they tend to be successful is where there's high volume and when they're serving multiple class ones, or, as much as we'd love to migrate more freight to rail, it just doesn't economically make sense. And it sounds to me here we have exactly that example where it's not economically making sense. I think we have a real problem with your statement that people are not getting paid. And I don't think any of us want to be put in a situation where people are being asked to do work of whatever kind, and we're not honoring those obligations. So I don't know how you all are coming together to figure out Plan B, but it seems to me that time is of the essence to have either some exit strategy or some viable business plan, because it doesn't sound like we have one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's exact. Fran just hit the nail on the head that I was going to comment. So I don't know if this is an action item or not, but it seems to me as though you should return to the commission within 90 days with two items: a viable business plan and a viable shutdown plan, because it's unconscionable to continue in this operation. And if you've got something that's operating that is not fiscally viable, then it should not continue in operation. So I think it would probably be best to see a shutdown plan that the commission could look at, as well as, if you think you can continue to stay in business, what an updated business plan would look like. And I don't know if it's appropriate to make a motion or what the direction of the commission would be, but that's what I would be doing.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask that Mr. Bosco address the operations questions very briefly?
We can do that, but it's an information item, but we can request for it to come back.
That would be my request, then, that this matter come back at the next meeting.
Have to address the RIF loan also in this kind of a discussion, which that seems to me an overriding issue.
I would like to come to the mic.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like to come to the mic is an overstatement, but let me say this, that we could easily be here all day on this issue. I represent the private company that operates this railroad. We operate it profitably. We have undergone enormous obstacles in the time that we've had this railroad since 2011. We put $5 million of our own money into it. We were hit with a CEQA lawsuit from the city of Novato that cost us $600,000. We were hit with the Friends of the Eel River lawsuit that has cost us over $1 million. We consistently pay for upkeep on the line. The line goes through areas that are habitually flooded. So I could, you talk about a business plan. First of all, as a private company, we probably would be unlikely to share all of the details of our business, but I can tell you that this railroad is difficult to operate, but it can be operated profitably. Having been involved in both the legislature and the Congress and the funding for this railroad over a period of 30 years, I can tell you that if the commission wants to focus on this, we'd be happy to have you do it, because about 240 miles of this railroad will probably never be operated. And it's the legislature and not we who set aside the entire 316 miles of it. So, you talk about coming up with a shutdown plan. That would have to go to the legislature, because the legislature determined that this railroad exists. We, as a private company, are not going to operate from Napa to Eureka. We are operating profitably from Napa to around Windsor. Let me say another thing, that a good part of the southern part of the railroad, as of today, is going to have passenger service on it. The SMART service, which, wonderful, it's starting up today. Passengers are going to start using it today. This has also created a problem for us in the freight section, because the passenger rail, first of all, dominates the system for part of it, so we have to put our freight trains interacting with them, and as it turns out now, we're operating at night. Secondly, they have a very sophisticated control system that we have to have our locomotives equipped with that, which is very expensive. Thirdly, when we used to be able to put a spur in somewhere, because freight service needs spurs, it would cost us $150,000. Now, because of the SMART system, it costs us $700,000 or $800,000 to put in that same spur. The Lagunitas Beer Company, for instance, wants a spur into their facility. They have to consider whether they want to pay $800,000 to put a spur in. In the past, we just do it ourselves. But so, as I say, without any disrespect, we could go on for a long period of time. I'm not sure that the CTC or Caltrans wants to do that, but if you do, it is a major issue. I think the NCRA deserves credit for holding things together all this time, and they do hold things together pretty well, but it is not an easy operation. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Well, I think we're kind of at a crossroads here. We've got Caltrans. Somebody's going to have to do a little bit of research and get back to us on what this is going to go, but I'm not really sure who to assign that to.
Well, Commissioners, staff will work with District 1. Brad Medham is here from the Caltrans District Office, and we can work with him and bring back, we will ask NCRA to bring back a business plan as well as a shutdown plan, and I think some information on the RIF loan, and at least bring that back for your information at a future meeting. And we'll work with District 1 and NCRA to see if we can't get that done fairly quickly. I would expect that it may not be, in August. It may take, I don't know, maybe at the October meeting. So that'll be the goal of staff. Does that work for the commission? Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will go to item 109.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tab 109 is an action item to approve an allocation of $15.436 million for Middle Harbor Terminal Redevelopment Project in Los Angeles County. That's TCIF Project 121. Last May, the Commission approved amending the TCIF program to include this project and also approved this baseline agreement. Staff recommend Commission approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Fran. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 110, Teresa.
Commissioners, item 110 is an action item. This is a program amendment to the Proposition 1B Intercity Rail Improvement Program. This request is to delete the Northern California Maintenance Facility Project and associated funding and add the Capital Corridor Sacramento to Roseville Third Track Phase 1 project and Program 18,251 that were deleted from the Northern California Maintenance Facility Project. Staff recommends the approval of this program amendment.
Second.
Motion by Dunn, second by Arp. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 111.
Item 111 is an action item. This is a program amendment to the Proposition 1A High-Speed Passenger Train Bond Program. This request is to delete the Capital Corridor Oakland to San Jose Track Improvement Phase 2A project and associated funding. This request also is to increase the program amount to the Capital Corridor Sacramento to Roseville Third Track project by $36,370,000. Staff recommends your approval.
I got a motion by Arp, a second by Burke, question by Gilmetti.
Teresa, we have, both in 110 and 111, we have deletions.
Correct.
Are they coming back sometime? Is this just moving money around? What are we doing?
Right. We have the Capital Corridors, David, here to answer as to why they're deleting the project for the San Jose, the Oakland to San Jose. My understanding is that the project is not ready to go. They had issues with the railroad. And so for now, they're putting their funding on the Sacramento to Roseville project to move forward with that project. David Kotrowski is here from Capital Corridors. If you have additional something more, he can chime in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here before you and appreciate the action you've taken on the Sacramento-Roseville Third Track project. In response to your question, Commissioner, we've had discussions with Union Pacific, some call negotiations, but I call them the long-going negotiations with them between Oakland-San Jose Phase 2 project and our Sac-Roseville Third Track project. We put them both in the queue at the same time. Union Pacific had some requests and concerns on the Oakland-San Jose project. They were full speed, wanted to go ahead with the Third Track project in Roseville. It became a timing issue, so when it came call for projects on the TIRCIP program, we were able to put together a funding plan. We went to our board of directors at the Capital Corridor. This had a lot of conversation because there were some representatives down in the South Bay and the East Bay that had some concerns, exactly like you do, where we're going with this project. So I can tell you that the Sacramento-Roseville Third Track project, while we're getting Phase 1 done here, we're also continuing to look for a funding plan for Phase 2, which will allow us to have hourly service that extends from Sacramento up to Roseville. So Roseville will now be able to have access to the Bay Area on an hourly basis. But in going back to what you were talking about, right. Oakland, San Jose, with SB1 and some of the new programs that are available for funding, I have actually restarted conversations with Union Pacific. We're going to be pulling in Alameda County because they have a freight goods movement study going along. So I think we've got some keen interest to get that project going as well.
So it's going to come back to us soon?
Certainly, Ed.
Thank you.
Jim.
Yeah, I had one question also, please. Right now, if you want to take the train, the Capital Corridor from Roseville, most of the time you have to get on a bus and take the bus into Sacramento, and then you get on the train. I think there's a couple during the day that maybe you can take it direct, but will this change that service so that people traveling from Roseville can get on the train there more frequently?
Exactly. So Phase 1, when that track improvement is complete, we'll extend 2 of those trains. So there'll be 1 round trip today, which lo and behold, those trains are one of our busiest trains. It's a huge market there. So this will then allow for 2 additional morning trains to come out. We will replace those buses. As I mentioned, Phase 2 will be a full complement of all the buses will be replaced with trains. So it'll be a 1-seat ride all the way down to the Bay Area.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions? We'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 112.
Commissioners, item 112 is an action item. This is the financial allocation request for the design and right-of-way phases of the Capitol Corridor Sacramento to Roseville Third Track Phase 1 project. This is funded from Proposition 1A, Proposition 1B, and Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Programs. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Modafer. Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 113.
Commissioners, item 113 is an information item. This is a report on the local assistance lump sum allocation. John Hull, acting chief for the local assistance program, is here to provide you an update on the lump sum that you approved for the last fiscal year. And John Hull's not here? Oh. John Hull is not here yet. Okay.
If we can postpone this, we'll make sure we get somebody to come here before the meeting's over to address this item, if we can come back to it.
Okay.
Okay. The following item is the annual lump sum for state funds for local assistance. Is it the pleasure of the commission to postpone that item as well?
Probably.
Okay.
We don't really have the information to act on it, so we'll bring that back too.
Okay.
Item 115.
That was 113 and 114.
Okay, right.
Okay.
They're coming back.
There we go.
Okay.
Commissioners, tab 115 is an information item on the draft capital improvement plan element of the California Aviation System Plan. Staff has reviewed this draft plan and has no comments at this time. A representative from the Division of Aeronautics is present if you have any questions that you'd like to ask on this draft plan.
Grant.
Well, I just want to repeat my question from yesterday in terms of the new FAA reauthorization proposals and how that might alter this aviation plan, and particularly in regard to what may happen with the privatization of the air traffic control in our smaller airports.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tariq Tabshuri from the Division of Aeronautics. The status of the reauthorization bill, as far as we can tell, is there's not still quite good direction from the FAA, and we haven't assessed the impact on the Division of Aeronautics on the state. But as far as I could tell, we could not really see a direct impact with the privatization on Caltrans business.
That's not what I'm hearing from the DC side. I just worry that the cost will dramatically alter our ability. So I don't know if we're,
sure. And
obviously it's not approved yet, but there's lots of discussions.
Well, I think the airports that are affected by FAA and the air traffic controllers are the larger ones that work directly with FAA. The airports that we deal with in the aeronautics program are the civil aviation airports, so they're not affected by most of that.
But I think there may be some trickle down. I don't know. I'm not an aviation expert.
In all fairness, Commissioner, I'm not here. I have not prepared a good answer for that, but we can. I could definitely go back and we could provide the Commission some feedback on that.
Items 116 is an action item for 2 TCRP projects in Sacramento County. The request to amend the South Line Light Rail Corridor Extension Project and the Northeast Corridor Enhancements projects updates the project schedule, funding plans, and allows the use of $13 million in identified savings. Staff recommends approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Modafer. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 117.
Tab 117 is an action item to amend the San Joaquin Corridor Rail Line project. This amendment requests moves $10,257,000 in TCRP savings from Segment 2 to Segment 4 for construction. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval.
So moved.
Motion by Arp, second by Dunn. Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 118.
Tab 118 is an action item to amend MetroLink's San Bernardino Track and Signal Improvements Project. This amendment moves $812,000 in TCRP savings to a second project within the original location for construction of additional improvements. Staff has reviewed and requests approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Inman. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next.
Tab 119 is an action item to amend the Route 98 widening project in Imperial County. The remaining $1 million in TCRP funding will be used to start the PS&E phase of work. Staff has reviewed and requests approval.
Motion by Dunn, second by Tavaloni. Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 121.
Tab 121 is an action item to amend 4 TCRP projects in Los Angeles County. This amendment will allow $35.8 million in savings to be used on the North-South Corridor Bus Transit Project and the Route 71 project. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval.
Motion by Yvonne, second by Inman. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 122.
Tab 122 is an action item to amend 4 TCRP projects in Riverside and San Bernardino counties. This amendment will allow $6.158 million in savings to be used for right-of-way on the South Milliken Avenue Railroad grade crossing project in San Bernardino. Staff has reviewed and requests approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Inman. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 123.
123. So 123, the next 6 items for TCRP are going to be the allocations. So tab 123 is an action item for the allocation of $10.8 million in TCRP funds for 3 state-administered projects in Santa Clara, Los Angeles, and Imperial counties. Staff recommends approval.
Motion by Gilmetti, second by Dunn. Questions?
I have one question.
Sure.
So where's this money coming from? The TCR program is really old.
Yes, so with our May policy, the policy we adopted in May was to close out the TCRP program based on SB1 statute. So these savings are coming from the existing allocation capacity that we received last year, and then also savings on the projects that have already received allocations, so we're like recycling those savings.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next.
So tab 124 is action item for the allocation of $12.293 million in TCRP funds for 4 locally administered projects. Staff has reviewed and requests approval.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Arp, second by Tavaloni. Questions? Commissioner Burke.
How much is remaining? How much money is remaining in this fund?
In the TCRP fund, from working with Caltrans, we have, as of for this commission meeting, we've identified every single amount of savings that we could possibly identify.
So this is it?
So this would be, this is the last, basically, allocations for this program that the commission will be taking.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 125.
Item 125 is an action item for the allocation of $13.812 million in TCRP for 3 locally administered transit projects in Sacramento and San Bernardino County. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 126.
126 is an action item for the allocation of $10.257 million in TCRP funds for the Merced to La Grande double track project in Merced County. Staff has reviewed and recommends approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Madaffer. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 127.
Okay, tab 127, action item for allocation and TCRP savings for the North-South Bus Transit Project in Los Angeles County. Staff recommends approval.
Motion by Gilmetti, second by Burke. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 128.
And the last TCRP allocation as an action item for the allocation of $28 million in TCRP funds for the Route 46 Expressway project in Kern County. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Banaffer, second by Dunn. Questions?
Just a comment, this is the last one on the TCRP?
Yes.
So it adds up to how much in savings here? It looks like quite a bit.
There was about $102 million in savings.
So, I mean, it's a smaller scale. We had back when we were spending the Prop 1B funds, there were a lot of savings that were recycled in a sense, and additional projects got put on. This is a smaller scale, but it's the same thing. We need to do a better job of making sure people understand what we're doing with the money. So I would hope that somehow or another, in the press statement that comes out of this meeting, that we point out that we've got some new projects that came on, a pretty old program actually, but the savings are getting applied to good projects.
Yes.
Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. And the conversation Commissioner Arp and I have a note here that with the action on tab 128, we close out the TCRP program. I'd like to thank the staff and the department for all of their work to make this program successful. And just a note, since 2000, $4.5 billion have been allocated under this program for congestion relief projects throughout the state. So job very well done. Thank you very much.
So what are you going to do if there's savings on those projects? I'm just kidding.
More, we want more. All right, item 130, Lori.
Commissioners, tabs 130 and 131 are action items. They are to approve advanced financial allocations for 6 active transportation projects. Excuse me. Staff has reviewed these allocations and found them consistent with the ATP guidelines and recommends your approval.
Motion by Dunn, second by Gilmetti. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 132, Teresa.
Commissioners, item 132 is an information item. This is an update to the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program. They have moved some funding around, and so we are here to provide the update is Kyle Grandinger, the acting chief for the Rail and Mass Transit Program. So he will just give an overall view as to what changed since the last update.
Very good. Next.
Thank you, Chairman Alvarado. Thank you, Commissioners. So, since the last update was given in March, let's see, we've made a few changes, as were mentioned. If you'd like to, I could just read through the list and give you a quick update of which items were changed. Okay. For the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority, increased rail service to Roseville from FY 16-17, we had $926,000 allocated. We are moving the remainder, $7.553 million, to FY 18-19. For the San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission, ACE Near-Term Capacity Improvement Program, we are moving $2 million from FY 16-17 to FY 17-18 and adding in $16,459,000 through the SB 132 funding. And in the Lausanne Rail Corridor, we have a Lausanne North Robust Timetable Project. We're moving $500,000 from FY 16-17 to FY 17-18. We'll also be moving $500,000 from 16-17 to 17-18 for a network-wide integration and strategic investment planning project. And in total, for the ACE Merced extension, we've also added that into the TIRCP list related to the SB 132 funding. And that is an award amount of $400 million. Long term, we're looking at beginning allocations in FY 17-18 of $32 million, and then $58 million 18-19 and $55 million in 19-20. And those are the adjustments that we've made since March.
Questions? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
takes us to agenda item 133. This is an action item. These are financial allocations for 4 projects in the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program for $30,878,000. Just a note, in the allocation capacity under item 18 yesterday, they identify only 20 million capacity for this program for 16-17. I have verified with budgets, and they indicated that the remaining capacity will be coming from the 17-18 fiscal year. So at this point, staff recommends you approve $30,878,000 for 4 projects in the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program.
Motion by Modafer, second by Tavaloni. Question. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Local assistance.
What? Do we have a speaker? Oh, on 134. Okay. Okay.
Commissioners, item 134 is a request to extend the period of allocation for 30 active transportation projects. Staff has reviewed these requests and found them consistent with guidelines. Staff recommends approving the request as shown on the yellow time extension table.
We have a speaker on this item. Chuck Auckland.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chair and members of the Commission. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you regarding our Quartz Hill Road Active Transportation Program project in the City of Reading. I am Chuck Auckland. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works in the City of Reading, and I wanted to let you know that first that we are 100% committed to this project. We just need a little bit more time. We have the project 100% designed. We have environmental complete, and unfortunately, as we've been through the design process, the costs have increased a bit. We do have identified funding to pursue this project. We just need a little bit more time to put that funding together, as well as we think we can take advantage of a little bit more favorable bidding time into the fall as we assemble the funding to get necessary so that we can get a better bid when we get to construction bids. We're working with the Shasta Regional Transportation Agency, our own electric utility, and if nothing else fails, the Commission passed, or the legislature passed SB1, and we expect to have additional HUDA funding, and we will fund this program with that using our resources. And so appreciate your support on this project. We just request a little bit more time to get it out the door.
Questions?
I have a question. I appreciate you coming in and explaining your particular situation. There's 29 other projects here that nobody is speaking up for. Are these primarily the first year's project? And how many projects did we actually approve in the first year? I mean, how many projects got approval and funding in that first year's program?
I think it was about 150.
About 150?
That's an estimate.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to say is that there are 30. Last June, we had 64 of project allocation extensions on the ATP, so we've improved quite a bit. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but we have reduced those by over half.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I don't think we had a motion on this one. Motion by Tavaloni, second by Modafer. Further questions?
Yes.
Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item, Teresa.
Commissioners, item 135 is an action item. This is a request to extend the allocation deadline for 3 locally administered STIP projects. Staff has reviewed these requests and finds them consistent with STIP guidelines, and staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Modafer. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 136.
Item 136 is an action item. This is a request to extend the allocation deadline for 1 STIP intercity rail project. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines, and staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Gilmetti, second by Burke. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 137.
Item 137 is also a time extension to extend the allocation deadline for one STIP project that is on system, implemented by a local agency. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines, and staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 138.
Commissioners, item 138 is an action item requesting allocation extension for 89 SHOP projects. The majority of these projects, 71 of them, in fact, are planned to deliver mid to late June, and we should be seeing those projects for allocation at the Commission's August meeting. The remaining 18 projects require a bit more than 2 months. Staff has reviewed these requests and recommends the extensions requested in the yellow replacement book item. Staff recommends approval.
Second. Motion by Banaffer, second by Arp. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 139.
Commissioners, item 139 is an action item. It's a request to extend the period of contract award for 8 ATP projects. There's one change that's listed on the change list. Project number 4, City of Santa Barbara, Cacique and Soledad Ped Bike Bridges and Corridor Improvement Project has been withdrawn. Staff recommends approving the request as shown on the yellow time extension table.
Motion by Dunn, second by Inman. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 140 has been withdrawn. Item 141.
Commissioners, item 141 is an action item requesting to extend the award time for 2 aeronautics projects in Trinity County. Staff has reviewed the request and is in agreement with the 8-month extension and recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 142.
Commissioners, item 142 is a request to extend the period of project completion for the City of Davis Safe Routes to School program in Yolo County. Staff has reviewed this request and found it consistent with ATP guidelines and requests your approval. Recommends your approval.
So moved. Motion by Arp, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. 143.
143 is an action item. This is a request to extend project completion for 2 projects in the STIP program. Staff has reviewed these requests and finds them consistent with STIP guidelines. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Kehoe. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 144.
Commissioners, item 144 is an action item to extend the period of expenditure for the Covelo State Route 162 Corridor Multipurpose Trail Phase 1 project in Mendocino County. Staff has reviewed this request and found it consistent with ATP guidelines. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Dunn, second by Tavaloni. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 145.
Item 145 is an extension request for project development expenditures for 2 STIP projects. STIP has reviewed these requests and finds them consistent with STIP guidelines. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Tavaloni. Second. Second by Arp. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 146.
Item 146 is also a time extension to extend the period of project development for a locally administered STIP project. Staff has reviewed this time extension and recommends approval.
Second. Motion by Gilmedi, second by Dunn. Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
Commissioners, item 147 is an action item requesting to extend the period of right-of-way expenditures for 3 local bridge seismic retrofit projects. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval.
Daffer, further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, now we're going to jump back to 113 and 114.
Commissioners, item 113. Yeah. Commissioners, 113 is an information item. This is the quarterly report for the local assistance lump sum allocation for the period ending March 31st, 2017. John Hull is here to provide that update.
First, let me apologize for running a little behind schedule there. I appreciate your patience. I am John Hull. I'm with the Acting Division Chief for the Division of Local Assistance at the Department of Transportation. I'm here representing items 113 and 114. The first 113 is a quarterly update of our allocations to this point up through March 31st of 2017. $411 million of the 1.7 that were allocated by the CTC for the fiscal year. I would be happy to take any questions. Okay.
It should be noted that this is the federal funds that the commission allocates on a yearly basis. They will be coming back to request for the next year's, and it will be, I believe, in August, correct? Or October. And so we will get a final fiscal year report by December, so it will be a better picture as to how they did and how they spent. The next item is an action item. This is the annual lump sum allocation request by the department of $107 million to administer the local assistance 2017-18 state lump sum subvention program. This is the state portion of the lump sum, and staff recommends your approval.
Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay.
Thank you, Teresa.
Item 89 is not going to be deferred? Okay, then we're going to jump to 100.
No.
Oh, what?
First we'll hear 89.
We're still here 89, and then we'll go to,
If we need to.
if we need to, we'll go to 100. We're in 89 now. Yeah, I got marks all over this damn thing.
Hopefully you don't need it.
That doesn't sound too good.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. I really appreciate the opportunity to be back. My name is Kome Ajise with Caltrans. Really appreciate the opportunity to be back to address this issue. And first, to let you know, it was really good to hear from the Commission on your concerns about the program going forward. And we took to heart all of your comments and your concerns. And we want to be mindful of your role in overseeing these funds. So what we're proposing, I think yesterday the idea was to program the entire program for about $23 million. What we're proposing is that we program the 11 sites, but only limit the allocation to doing the environmental work. However, this will be executed whether we do the design or we procure the design externally. We still have to be responsible for the environmental on all of those sites. And so that then allows us to have a fighting chance to at least meet a substantial completion of most of the sites by the end of 2018. So that's the proposal, and we're glad to take any more questions. I think we've talked through some options that we'll bring back in August as to how we might want to prosecute the full execution of each one of the sites.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Comey, if you could just reiterate, then you're asking for an allocation of about, I think you said 1.5 million for the environmental. Is that
It's
correct?
about 1.78 million for the environmental so far that we've costed in the project study reports.
And then you would be coming back with a more detailed report and potentially issuing an RFI so the private sector could also weigh in on this?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the sites that we've selected, as I mentioned yesterday, were gap sites, areas that were not commercially viable for the most part. Working with Energy Commission and GoBiz, we identified these sites. What we are proposing to do is to go back out and ask to see if there is any interest on the private sector side to install at these locations. In the meantime, we'll at least get a jump start on the environmental review for all of the sites.
And I appreciate that. And I think you heard yesterday the Commission completely supports the goal of the Governor and GoBiz regarding the EV charging. It was just an issue of being mindful, as you indicated, of SB1 money. I guess when you come back in August, if staff could also have some additional detail as to how this charging system is going to work. Is this going to be a ubiquitous system that's available to the public at no charge? Is it going to be a single vendor? Those things weren't clear, of course, in the staff report, and I think it would be important to understand that. Obviously, the best thing would be if it's a DC fast charger, anybody could use it. So that way you don't show up at a rest stop and you find out, oh, I'm a member of ChargePoint, but it's a different brand, and then it's a worthless investment. So those are the kind of things I think we should get clarification on. But
we'll provide more clarity on individual sites and what the potential charging opportunities will look like at each site.
very good. Does staff have anything to add prior to a motion? Because I'd be prepared to make a motion to authorize the $1.78 million with staff, with Caltrans returning in August.
Actually, that's what I was just going to ask. What would the recommendation be for the motion?
I've got a couple of comments.
Christine?
I think Stephen did have some suggestions around, I heard Comey say you're going to go past the $20 million mark. I think Stephen had a $20 million in the report, and also a tighter ratio on the soft costs, the operations. Can you tell us more about that, Comey? And can you get the project costs down below this $24 million?
What we're proposing is to come back with a new cost estimate on what that might look like after we've done another look through the entire program. Right now, we're only asking for resources to begin the environmental work. That is necessary. However, we procure it. We still have to be. We're responsible for CEQA and NEPA on these projects, and so that's all we're asking for. But the cost, given the concerns you had, we want to come back and give you a better sense of some more due diligence on that.
Okay, good. That's important. And also, this is a unique, electric highway sort of, concept. But if Caltrans is going to get into the, electric charging business at other rest stops or other areas, I think you need to really come up with some policies and some benchmarks for how you're going to approach this kind of business. It's evolving every day. It's not your core business. You really need to look at it a lot more carefully than this discussion has shown. Maybe it's happening in other parts of the organization.
Yeah, it would be my expectation that we're not going to be all over the place with charging. I think we feel like our role is really to stimulate the areas that have gaps. There's a density of charging in most of the urbanized areas, so we're not going to compete with those. And to the extent that these sites might actually require more capacity for charging, we are going to have that built into the base infrastructure.
Thanks.
I know this is a mandate basically coming from the governor's office, et cetera, that I support, but part of the problem here is we have the federal funding that's involved in this stuff, which, as I understand it, other than a few states, we can't have a private enterprise come in and operate these.
At the rest stops.
At the rest stops. That's correct. And, somewhere maybe the governor needs to start talking to our state senators and congressional delegation about changing that. We've had this discussion at the commission for some time that in order to save the state a lot of money, if we brought private enterprise in to run the restaurants, develop a restroom or restaurants or whatever like they do in Europe.
And many other states.
In many other states. Well, the other states were grandfathered in, as I understand it. So, and we're prevented from doing that. But I think it's time for a change in legislation to allow you more flexibility in using our right-of-way to our benefit and have private enterprise take care of some of that stuff. It certainly could do the charging stations without a problem. So I would encourage Mr. Ennis over here to talk to the administration about seeing if we can put some pressure on the feds and our elected officials to change that law. Thank you.
Thanks, Comey. A couple of thoughts too that clarification. Absent just the environmental, there's no presumption of anything further that would come from this, that you'd be expecting from this commission until you reported back on the environmental review, correct?
Absolutely. We really wouldn't have no authority to go further than environmental if you take the action today.
Great. And then the second thing that was intriguing, Commissioner Kehoe said yesterday is, I notice in the private sector, particularly where I live, a lot of our commercial buildings are including charging stations just as a natural part now of upgrading facilities and delivery. And when Commissioner Kehoe mentioned that, I think maybe you responded, some state buildings don't have this. I mean, that's the kind of public-private partnership concession that if you allow the private sector to come in and start adding more and more charging stations in the higher density areas, the high use areas, and add as the concession, okay, could you build out in a couple of these areas as part of the deal? I think looking at this holistically would really advance a whole state effort as opposed to just focusing on, you know, the harder areas to reach and then expecting Caltrans to mission creep in my world, you know?
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
I think that's an excellent point. This is a very unique program. The 30 and 30 program is unique. There is a larger discussion around ZEV and ZEV charging at state buildings that has a lot of coordination to it. We're working with CHP as an example and our co-locations to have that happen, and we're working with several other state agencies. There are others like Ellen Greenberg who are actually is working directly with all the other state agencies on that. She might have a little more information on that.
But that might be something
but your
to come
point
back,
is well taken.
That might be something to come back with instead of bifurcating. Here's the hard stuff, but mix it into the whole system. And I would just love to hear that more.
I think we could bring back a presentation on the entire ZEV program and bring some of our state partners to have that conversation.
And private sector that we could incentivize to participate more fully.
Absolutely.
Just an idea. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to do a couple things here, so you want to walk us through this?
Well, what I would
I'm sorry, Jim, did you have?
No, I think I'd rather wait for staff. I was just going to make the motion regarding the 1.78, but go ahead.
What staff would like to get from the department is a clarification exactly of what is the scope of what we're going to be doing here, how much is it going to cost, and how is that going to work against a capital to support ratio against all of this, because it looks like they're asking for $1.78 million to do environmental work, which seems to be a rather large soft support cost number. So, Comey, what is exactly this $1.78 million to be used for?
It's an average of about $162,000 per project to do environmental work on each site. A couple of the sites, just to be specific, a couple of sites, I think the number one site on your attachment A in the book item, number one site, the Humboldt 96 site, is on tribal lands. We have to do cultural analysis, we have to do biological analysis. We expect that ultimately the environmental document will be a categorical exemption. But before we get to that decision, the environmental process requires us to do some of those analyses. And so that's what that's going to look like. So all we're asking is whether we procure it privately or we design it internally at Caltrans and go to construction, we still have to do environmental work. And that's what's been, what we've proposed to do in the project study reports that give us the scope for these projects.
Okay, and I'm asking again, we talked earlier, but I want to make sure that it's on the record. So none of the, I mean, because these sites are at existing rest stops.
Yes.
And so have these studies been not done before?
Well, these are going to be locations that you're going to be building new asphalt. You're going to be bringing in high-capacity power that doesn't exist at this site. So it's going to require trenching from wherever the power source is. I can't tell you exactly how long those trenches will be, but you have ground disturbance.
Yeah, but Comey, those are capital costs. What you're really looking for is you're upgrading existing electrical systems to a higher grade of an up to code and whatever grade of electrical systems are. So how would that be a full-blown environmental process review?
Because I'm just having a hard time that we're going into an existing building, if you will, how we can't just go right to a negative deck. I mean, a full-blown environmental.
This is less than a negative deck.
I'm still having a hard time with this, I guess.
This is actually less than a negative deck. There might be one site that could be a negative deck. These are categorical exemption projects, but you can't get to a CE without proving that you don't have an impact. And to do that,
but why would that cost $1.8 million?
I'm just going to say, but I'm just having a hard time getting my arms wrapped around the cost of adding a charging station.
Again, any project in California requires us, this is a bona fide project, each one of them requires us to do CEQA approvals, which means we have to prove there is no impact on the environment. And to build these sites, we're building new pads, which means we're building new permeable surface with asphalt concrete. We have to make it ADA compliant. These are all footprints that are new, that don't exist. In some cases, the trenching may be off premises to bring power in because we don't have the right power to do a DC fast charger on these locations.
When we put the charging station in a building, we just went and got a permit. We didn't, it was kind of like an addition. We didn't have to do this full-blown environmental. But I guess because we can argue this all day long. So what are we going to do? We're going to amend this into?
What staff would recommend is that you amend in these 11 projects into the shop, but you limit the scope of what's being amended in, that we do not amend in things that staff believes are not shop eligible, which is the actual purchase and installation of the ZEV units.
That's why we're only asking for the environmental. We're not amending.
I'm speaking right now. I'm making a recommendation.
Okay.
And that staff recommends also that the cost of capital to support be limited to 50%. The department can then parse it out any way it wants to, and that the overall cost of everything be kept at the budget language of $20 million. This way they can go forward and do whatever needs to be done.
Now, I won't make that motion. I will do everything you just said, Stephen, but I want to limit it to $1.78 million for now. I want him to come back with a full plan. I think Stephen had a great suggested motion or recommendation from staff, which I would adopt, but I would stop at limiting it to the $1.78 million, capping staff or soft cost to 50%, and come back in August or whatever the next meeting is with a recommendation for the additional funds that's being requested.
Staff would be supporting 100% with that. In agreement.
All right, that would be the motion.
Second.
Got a motion by Madaffer, a second by Kehoe. Further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Oops, I'm sorry.
Comey, can I just ask you a question? Periodically, our rest stops close for one reason or another, and if we're establishing a network that people are going to depend on, as Commissioner Burke pointed out in terms of a safety concern if you're running out of your fuel source, can we include in the business plan development that you're doing some kind of history of those closings? Because it's my recollection that it's not that uncommon to be on the freeway and rest stop close. So what will that do to my ability to get to the charging station? So I think this is a little bigger business plan than maybe you were thinking.
That's an excellent point. Thank you.
Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Now,
Commissioners, we need to take up agenda item 100. This was a late book item that came in yesterday, and included in that was an allocation that is related to this amendment that you just took. And so we will ask Rick on agenda item 100 to advise the commission on the action that needs to be taken.
Thank you. Rick Cavell for tab 100. At yesterday's commission meeting, the commission took an action on COS allocation for environmental design and right-of-way support for a number of projects. In that list were 5 of these zero-emission vehicle charging projects. So the commission staff would like to recommend that for project 15, 17, and 119, the PS&E and right-of-way support be removed from this list. That will leave the environmental support for 5 projects.
that's a recommendation?
Correct.
I thought there were 7 projects.
In the request, there are a total of 11 projects. They've only asked for an allocation, the department has only asked for an allocation of 5 projects.
So we'll just need a motion to confirm that.
If I could clarify the lack of the other sites on there, that was an oversight on our part, where we thought we were asking for that within the Action 89, and it became clear afterwards, after submitting these, that we needed to make a separate allocation request for those components in 89 for 6 of them. We only have 5 of them listed in the allocation 100.
Wait a minute, no, time out. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Commissioners, you can only take an action on the materials before you. And Rick has identified what is in the materials before you, the amendment that needs to take place to your prior action to amend out the PS&E right-of-way and construction for the allocations that were requested for, I believe it was 5 sites. Caltrans will need to bring back at a future meeting another allocation request for the other sites.
So move staff recommendation.
Thank you. We got a motion by Madaffer. Second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Before we adjourn, we're not going to do this again. Just jumping all around. So when we notice our meetings, if it's a one-day meeting, fine, but we need to let everybody that has an agenda item know that we don't know if their agenda item is going to be taken up on the afternoon or can be taken up in the following morning. So everybody just needs to be here. So as the agenda items are being submitted, we need to let folks know that sometimes we move quickly, sometimes we don't. But this is just, I got marks all over this thing. I can't even follow it anymore. So we're not going to do that again. Okay? Thank you.
I support that motion.
So we're standing adjourned. Thank you very much. Oh, wait a minute.
Wait. Can I just ask a clarifying question between the motion on 89 and the motion that we just made? Is everybody clear in terms of what that means? And Comey, I'm looking at you because I think you're the point person on this. Do we all agree on how that impacts?
Yeah, I didn't hear the last motion, I apologize. But on 89, I thought Commissioner
I thought we were
Medaffer's-
clear on that, but then it appeared to me that in our correction of yesterday's action, that may have impacted that because there were some number less than the 11 projects that we were talking about earlier. So I just want to make sure everybody understands what.
So my understanding of the motion is the 11 sites are programmed, we're limited to only doing the environmental work, and we're coming back in August with a bigger explanation of the entire program in context with what else is going on with that.
Rick, is that your understanding as well?
Comey, there are 5 projects on on item 100 for ZEV. department will be coming back for allocation for environmental and the remaining projects. There's 6 more projects.
Yeah, under the first action, we limited them to $11.8 million. Under the second action, the commission allocated 5 projects to do environmental work. Now, there is 11 projects overall that are being amended, but only right now 5 projects received allocations. The department will have to come back later on for allocations for the environmental for the other projects. And at some point, the commission will give more programming to do design work and then engineering work, support work, and other support items later on as we progress through this.
Very good.
Okay,
And
well,
I forgot to ask for any public comment. No public comment? Okay, now we're adjourned.